Right. Good day, economics grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's subject, economics lesson. My name is Gabriel Litiani, and with me, my co-presenter will be Liam Fuking, who will be our WhatsApp respondent. Today's lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center and broadcast by Pagama Research and Development. So our WhatsApp line for today, if you've got any questions to answer, it is 060-667-5044 in case you've got any questions or any clarity seeking during our lesson. So if you look at our introduction, we'll be dealing with the multiplier, which is the topic that is found in the grade 12 lesson. Then in grade 10, you did circular flow diagram. Then in that circular flow, you did different participants, markets, up until where you were asked to derive the GDP and GNI. Then in grade 11, you did what we call national account aggregates. And then in grade 12 so far, and in our previous lessons, we have covered open economy, circular flow model, markets, national account aggregates, and then today we are going to be dealing with the multiplier, the explanation of the multiplier process with an aid of a circular flow as well as examples. Right. So this concept was developed by a British economist. His theory was that any increase in injections into the economy, it being investment, government expenditure or exports, would result in a proportionally larger increase in the national income. So it means whenever we've got an increase in injections, then the national income will be proportionally larger thereof. Then we know that the economy is at equilibrium when leakages and injections are equal. Or you could say, in an equation form, L is equals to J. Or if you want to list those leakages and injections, it is your savings, tax, and imports. Then for injections, you'll have investment, government expenditure, and exports. Now, if you look at the multiplier now, the multiplier is based on the principle that the spending by one person becomes an income of another person, which then becomes the spending, which turns into income yet for another person. So you can see that there is spending effect start to take place there. It's based on the principle that spending by one person becomes an income of another person, which then becomes spending of another person, which then becomes an income of yet another person. So what we mean by that, let's look at the following example. Suppose that there's a project that the governments want to undertake, and in this case, they want to build new roads. So they decide to increase their spending in building new roads. What's going to happen now is that they're going to hire contractors, they're going to hire architects, they're going to hire the people that are going to be, all the people that are involved in building this new road. So in that way, when they hire them, it means jobs are created, and this gives a rise to the level of employment. So these newly employed people, they will use the income that they receive from whatever they worked to purchase consumer goods and services. Then whatever income that they have to purchase goods and services, that in turn stimulates or give rise to what? To consumer goods and services, which will result in an increase in the production of those goods and services that they demanded, which in return will give an increase in further employment, because now the people that were hiring the road, they now have got income to spend. So the income that they spend on goods and services, it means there will be a demand for more goods and services. So the people that are producing goods and services, they will also receive their income. And the very same income that they receive, they are also going to buy other goods and services. More people will be needed to produce those goods and services. That is why we are saying now, that in turn will give a rise to the level of employment even further. Hence now we deal with the principle that the multiplier is based on the principle that the spending by one person becomes the income of another person, which then become the spending of another person, and then that will become an income of another person. That is why we call it the re-spending effect. So that is the example there in terms of when we want to build new roads, more employment is created. The people that are employed, they buy goods and services, stimulates demand for those goods and services, and then other people receive income, those who produce goods and services. The income that they have, they will use it again to buy other goods and services. More people are employed further. So that is the principle or the theory behind the multiplier. Then another point says now, this raises income and stimulates greater consumer demand, and so on and so on. So if you look at, we continue with our example. This implies that the multiplier process occurs in an economy when injections into the circular flow of spending, production, and income takes place. The multiplier refers to the ratio used to work out the difference between the initial investment and the individual change in the national income. The ratio that is used to work out the difference between the initial investment and eventual change in the national income. So now the question rises now. It means we want to check that if ever there is any investment or any spending that takes place by government, what impact will that have on the national income? Now, when you continue, it says, the size of the multiplier differs according to the extra income produced or created in each round of spending. But this will depend on the marginal propensity to consume. That is, how much of every rand earners are willing to spend on goods and services. The size of the multiplier differs according to the extra income produced. So if we look at now, we go back to our example of where the government wants to build these new roads. Remember we said the contractors are there, they start working, they earn their salary. So when they earn their salary, whatever portion of salary that they spend, it's going to be an income of another person who's producing goods and services. That person who produces goods and services, also the portion that they spend, it's going to then become another income of a person who's going to again use it to buy goods and services. Then the money multiplies itself or it circulates into the economy. But that size of the multiplier, it will differ or it will depend according to the extra income that is produced or created in each round of spending. That depends on what you call the concept marginal propensity to consume. That is how many of every rand income earners are willing to spend. So if we look at the concepts now that are going to be applicable in today's lessons and as well as in class. The first one that we are looking at there, it is consumption. It is the use of goods and services. And consumption expenditure. This one you are familiar with, that is denoted by the letter C. It is the purchasing of goods and services for the use by households. Then the new term now in grade 12, it is autonomous consumption. This is that part of spending or expenditure that is independent to the level of income. So it means now this spending, if we do another point here, when you are asked to define what you call consumption expenditure, then you are going to say, this is the consumption that will occur. That means it will take place even if the level of income is zero. That will occur even when the level of income is zero. Our autonomous consumption, it is the consumption that will occur even when the level of income is zero. Now, what do I mean by this? For example, take someone who's not working, or take people who are not working. Those people, the question will be, don't they need to survive? Don't they need to consume goods and services? Don't they need access to health care? And the answer will be that they need to survive, they need to buy goods and services for survival, they need health care. So the question will be, Then where do they get money from? Or how do they consume of all those goods and services if this consumption is independent on zero, on the income, on the level of income? So the consumption then, it will be the people that are not working. Some of them maybe had savings. So they will use their savings even if they are not working. They will use their savings to finance the healthcare. They will use their savings to buy goods and services. Some will depend on what we call inheritance. So those who've got inheritance, they will cash out their inheritance, use those inheritance, maybe in terms of money, someone left them money, they will use the money, even if they are not working, they will use the money to purchase those goods and services. Consumption will still take place, even if the income is what? It is zero. And then others, it will be what we call the usual one that we know. Social transfers or transfer payment. That means that is the type of grants that we receive from the government. It being a child grant, it being the unemployment grant, all those ones, people will still consume even if they are deemed not to be working. So in economics, any income that is independent, any consumption that is independent from income, that consumption, we call it what? Autonomous consumption. It takes place even if the level of income is zero there. The next one, it is then what we call an induced consumption. And then this one now, the induced consumption, what happens then? It is that it is the consumption, or it is the portion of the consumption that varies according to disposable income. It is the opposite of that one. Autonomous consumption, it is the part of spending or expenditure that is independent of the level of income. The induced one now, it is the portion of consumption that varies according to the disposable income. So it means if one has got more disposable income, then the induced consumption will tend to rise as such. So you can think of more possible examples of autonomous consumption as a grade 12 learner. If in case in class you are required to say, provide any examples of autonomous consumptions rather than withdrawals of savings, social transfer by government, or inheritance somewhere. Think of all those examples. Then remember now, with the induced one, there must be disposable income, and then that consumption will depend on that one. Another term that is familiar, it is investment. This is spending by firms on goods, on capital goods. And then if we continue with our concepts now, of which we'll be dealing with mostly today, the two concepts, multiplier and the multiplier effect. The multiplier describes the fact that changes in spending have impact on income that is greater than the original change in spending. So the fact that changes in spending have an impact on income, that is the key word, is that one, the greater than the original change in spending. That is our multiplier. The multiplier effect now, it refers to the small change in spending. So I usually like to say the small change in injections. The small change in injections produces a proportionally larger increase in the national income. That is the multiplier effect, to say once we've got a small change in any of the injections, whether it's investment by government or whether it's expenditure by government, how will that impact the national income? Yes, we know that it will produce a larger increase in the national income. Then another term now, remember you've seen this when we explain it, marginal propensity to consume. It is the proportion of any small increase in income that is spent on consumer goods and services. So what does that mean now? It means if you've got your disposable income, which is noted by the letter Y, which is 100, maybe 100 billion, or 100,000 for that matter, how much are you willing to consume on goods and services? So the willingness, or the one that you are willing to consume, that is one is measured by what we call an MPC, or marginal propensity to to consume. Thank you. And then on the next slide, if we still continue, this one now we look at the marginal propensity to save. This is the portion of any increase in saving that is as a result of an increase in income. So on the previous one, we said if you've got your disposable income, which is 100,000, how much are you willing to consume? It will be denoted by what you call your MPC. It will be noted by what you call your MPC. That is how much you are willing to consume there. Okay. Then MPS, it is how much are you willing to save if there is any increase. So this from this 100 rand or from this 1,000 or from 100,000 that you are getting. For example, let's say you get 100,000 and then you are willing to consume 60. It means the difference, which is 40, will be going to what you call what? Savings. That is the marginal propensity to save thereof. And then we'll continue with that one and explain even further when we go there. And then the other term, when now we're going to be introducing a three-sector economy, but we'll talk more about that. It is our MPS. It is our MPS thereof. The marginal propensity to save, we've said that, then the marginal propensity or marginal rate of taxation. This is now when we involve government. It says the proportion of any increase in taxation that is as a result of increase in income. So if we include government, your disposable income, you had 100,000. If the portion of it goes to tax, it means also your spending is going to decrease. But then if the income increases there, and then the marginal rate of taxation will also increase as such. And then the other one is the marginal propensity of import, or MPM or MRM, depending on which textbook you are using. It is the proportion of any small increase in imports that is the result of an increase in income. So those are the key concepts. Different textbooks cover those, and then we're going to highlight them when we continue further. Now, here we're going to be looking at the multiplier in a two-sector model. And then in this case, there are only two participants there. The participants are households, which is consumers, and firms, which is businesses in this case. And then the model assumes that there is no government intervention or the foreign sector. So out of the four participants that we have in a two-sector model, we'll only be dealing with households and businesses. There is only one leakage and only one injection. The leakage is savings by the households, and injection is the investment thereof. Right? Then now it's very important that we take this one. It says consumers don't spend 100% of their income, or consumers don't save 100% of their income. Consumers either spend their money or save a portion of it. So we're going to be dealing with that. And then if we look at the multiplier in a two-sector model, the proportion spent shows the marginal propensity to consume, which is MPC, and the proportion saved shows the marginal propensity to save. The size of the multiplier will depend on the proportion of any increase in income that is spent. Okay, now on this one, we are saying the proportion spent shows the marginal propensity to consume, which is MPC, and then the proportion saved shows the marginal propensity to save. The size of the multiplier will depend on the proportion of any increase in income that is spent. So if you can look at this, the size of the multiplier will depend on any increase in income that is spent. So that relates to what you call MPC. So the size of the multiplier will relate, or the size of the multiplier will depend on the on the MPC there. So the following are the formulas in case you are asked, therefore, to calculate a multiplier in a two-sector model. And you should look at those. And then after that, it says, all right, grade 12s, we're just going to take a short break, a 2-minute short break. And then after that, we're going to be dealing and applying this multiplier in a form of equation or in a form of calculations.
Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing because this can be done and you can be great.
Dreams. What is your dream? Yini iphupho lakho? Not your parents' dreams, not your mom's dream for your life. What is your dream? Is it to get a bursary? Is it to study science? Is it to become a DJ? Is it to become a singer? What is your dream? Iphupho lakho. Once you have that dream, what I need you to do, I need you to write it down. Ingole mofati. Write it down, ibhale phansi, and read it each and every single day when you wake up. Read it each and every single day before you go to bed, and remind yourself of where you want to see yourself. What is your dream? Write it down, meditate on it, and go after it with everything that you have.
I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I want? Do I want to become an A student or do I want to become an average student? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, how do you plan on getting there? Are you going to put more extra hours or are you going to just sleep? Number 3, who will be with you in this journey? Because it is important that we associate ourselves with students who have the same vision as us, who want to become a student, who want to put in the extra work, who want to become better at what they do. Unsuccessful people do not plan. They just let life happen to them. But successful people are planning on how they want their lives to be. And right now, you plan on how you want your results at the end of the year to be like.
Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have
test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing because this can be done and you can be great.
Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing because this can be done and you can be great.
Dreams. What is your dream? Yini iphupho lakho? Not your parents' dreams, not your mom's dream for your life. What is your dream? Is it to get a bursary? Is it to study science? Is it to become a DJ? Is it to become a singer? What is your dream? Iphupho lakho. Once you have that dream, what I need you to do, I need you to write it down. Ingole mofati. Write it down, ibhale phansi, and read it each and every single day when you wake up. Read it each and every single day before you go to bed and remind yourself of where you want to see yourself. What is your dream? Write it down, meditate on it, and go after it with everything that you have.
Right, Code Victory Charles, I hope you were able to go out and drink some water there. So now when we continue now, this is if in case you are requested to calculate the value of the multiplier or the multiplier effect in a two-sector model. So in this case, the multiplier, the formula is 1 over 1 minus MPC or 1 over MPS, or if you are given a scenario or a graph, you can also be requested to calculate it using the formula change in Y over change in E. Other books are saying over change in J there. So other books or other textbooks somewhere, the multiplier, the equation there, they might denote it with the letter alpha or K is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC, or alpha or K is equals to 1 over MPS, or this one, changing Y over changing J. So remember this one we said it's K. So other textbooks might give you these different formulas, but still we're still going to use them to calculate the multiplier. So let's look at the following example. It says here, remember we said the national income, it's going to depend on the marginal propensity to consume, or the size of the multiplier will depend on MPC. So here it says the larger the MPC, the larger the multiplier. Remember, MPC represents marginal propensity to consume, and the smaller the MPC, the smaller the multiplier. So let us look at in this way. Remember, in this two-sector model, there is no government intervention. So it means your Y represents your disposable income. Disposable income. So that Y that represents your disposable income, it means it's the money that you can spend or save, and then that it is 100% of your income. So according to these households, from their 100% disposable income, they decide to, that as they represent save. They decide to save 40,000 and spend, the E there represents expenditure. They decide to spend 60,000. So the question will be then, how do you come to this 40%? So remember, the S stands for saving, which will be denoted by MPS. So your MPS, it is the change in the savings divided by your change in your, which in this instance, the savings, it is 40,000 divided by the change in income, or the income, disposable income there, which is 100,000, multiplied by 100. And then it gives us what you call 40%. That is where they get it from. So your MPC in this case is equals to change in the expenditure divided by your change in income, which is equals to 60,000 divided by 100,000 multiplied by 100, which is equals to 60%. So that is where they got the 40%, that is where they got the 60%. It is the 40 divided by 100 multiplied by 100. That is where they got them from. So if we again look at it now, and you are asked to calculate the value of the MPC, it's going to be 60, and then the value of the MPS there, it is going to be 60. So if we continue now, if we continue with this, remember this is a two-sector model, economics learners. There is no government intervention, or there's no foreign sector. So it's only households and businesses that takes place there in this two-sector model. So that's where we are now. Right, then if we look at our next slide. If we look at our next slide. It's unmoving. Right. When we continue with that one, grade 12, it says now MPC it is 0.6 and then MPS it is 0.4. How do you then arrive to 0.6 and then how do you arrive to 0.4? It says the total of MPC and MPS should always be equal to 1. So it means now, even if you are given it in a percentage form or even if you are given it in values, always convert it into decimals so that it can give you the value of the MPC plus MPS being equal to 1. So if you are given the marginal propensity to save in this instance, they say the households decide to save 40,000. Convert that into decimals so that it can give you 0.4. And then if they say they decide to consume or spend 60,000, convert that into decimals so that it can give you what you call 0.6. Now if we put it into an example, let's look at this one now. It says, calculate the value of the multiplier if the household consumes or spend 50% of their disposable income. So indication, they already tell you to say, you are calculating the value of the multiplier if households do what? They consume 50% of their disposable income. Remember what you said, grade 12? Convert this into a decimal form. So you're going to say 50 divided by 100, and then it's going to give you what you call 50 divided by 100. It's going to give you 0.5. Now here, they are telling you that households consumes. So the consumption or spending, it is associated with MPC. If the scenario was saying household save 50%, and then that was going to be associated with MPS. So in this case, our MPC there, it is 0.5. Then when we substitute with our formula, 1 over 1 minus MPC, then which is equals to further, the multiply is equals to 1 over 1 minus 0.5, which is equals to 1 over 0.5. And then this 0.5 grade 12s, it is the same as if you are using that formula, 1 over MPS. And then the value of the multiplier there being equal to 2. So the 0.5 is when you are using 1 over MPS. The value of the multiplier, it is 0.2. Now it's very important here, grade 12s. I know sometimes when we are asked to calculate this, we use calculators. and then on the calculator, we just punch everything and arrive to the final answer. Yes, we understand that. However, it is very important for you to show all the steps that are there so that you can get full marks. Why am I saying that? You'll find that, the final mark, if this was out of 4, you'll find that the final mark is allocated only 2 marks. And then as an economics learner, because you're excited with this question, you know that you've got your 4 marks, only to find out that you will never get the full 4 marks, but you can only get 2 marks. Why? Because you just punch everything in the calculator and go to the final answer. So it is very important. The first point, starting point, if they didn't tell you which formula to use, read the scenario and apply the formula to use. Write the formula down. In this case, our formula is 1 over 1 minus MPC. Then do the second step, 1 over 1 minus 0.5. Probably there will be a mark that is allocated there. We don't know. And then the other one, it says 1 over 0.5. And then there's another mark that is allocated there. So do you see that, grade 12 learners, if only you punch everything in the calculator and arrive that, yes, the multiplier, which is 2, it is correct. But if you just write multiply is equals to 2, are you aware that you'll be forfeiting the other 2 marks that are allocated on the steps that should be followed? So it is very important for us to follow all the steps when we are calculating the multiplier. Now the last point there, it says, the larger the MPC, the bigger the multiplier, and the smaller the MPC, the smaller the multiplier. What does this mean now? It means, according to this, we see that our MPC, it is 0.5. So if our MPC was maybe 60, which is 0.6, the multiplier was not going to be 2. We're going to get a value that is higher than 2. Let's say we increase the spending from 50% to 80%. It means now the multiplier, or the value of the multiplier, was not going to be 2 anymore, but it was going to be a value that is higher than 2. That is why we are saying the larger the MPC, the bigger the multiplier. And the opposite is also true. The smaller the MPC, the smaller the multiplier. Another example again, on this one, it says, calculate, underline, the value of the what? The multiplier. If marginal propensity to do what? To save, it is 0.4. So they're telling you what to calculate, but again, you should read. So in this case, we are no longer going to use the formula of 1 over 1 minus MPC. Shoot straight, because already you know that you are given MPS. So your MPS there, it is 0.4. Write your formula down, grade 12 learner. 1 over MPS is equals to 1 over 0.4, and then the value of the multiplier, it is 2.5. So it also repeats what we said when we said the larger the MPC, the larger the multiplier. Remember in our previous example, the consumers were deciding to spend 50%. It means they were also saving 50%. In this case now, the consumers are saving 40%. It means they are spending 60%. Look at the value of the multiplier now. It is no longer 2, but it is 2.5. However, you can also, by confirming that K is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC. That formula is also irrelevant. Why? Because you remember when we started, we said MPC plus MPS must be equal to 1. So if our MPS, it is 0.4, it means our MPC, the value that we want here, it is going to be 1 minus 0.4, which is equals to 0.6. It means the value of MPC is 0.6. Then when we substitute there, is 1 over 1 minus 0.6, which is equals to 1 over 0.4. Then it brings back again to the value of the multiplier. You still get 2.5. So applying both formulas, grade 12 learners, the answer should be the same. You cannot get different answers when you're applying both formulas, because MPC plus MPS should always be equal to 1. Right, now we're going to be looking at the multiplier graph in a two-sector economy. I still repeat, that two-sector economy, remember we said it's only households and businesses there. So when you explain the graph, it says E is our original equilibrium point, which is this point here. And then Y, it is our original income, which is this point here. Then aggregate expenditure is equals to C plus I. C plus I, which is our original aggregate expenditure, which is this one. It is noted by that line, and then we get it there on top. AE is equals to C plus I. The 45-degree line, it is a point where income and expenditure are equal. And then that line, it is also known as the Keynesian line. Aggregate expenditure shows the initial equilibrium of Y at point E, which is that one. So the AE shows an initial equilibrium of Y at that point. Then if ever there's a new investment in this case, this rises AE curve upwards to AE1. Then if you look at between those two lines there, there's a delta there, which is change in investment. We can see the change in investment moved from AE to AE1. Then AE1 intersects the 45-degree line at point E1, and therefore Y, which is the income, shifts to Y1. There is a shift to Y1 there. The new equilibrium position at point E1, it is where aggregate expenditure is equals to aggregate income, which is this one. Now, if the planned spending determines aggregate expenditure and aggregate demand increases to AD1. So where does it start? Remember still when we started with the example, if people are employed, that stimulates demand. So the first starting point is that the AD1, it is the first round of income. And when that spending finishes, then we get the new investment now. With the new investment, it causes more demand for goods and services. So an increase in the demand of goods and services, it will move from AD to AD1. It shows that there's an increase in demand. What causes that increase in demand? It is as a result of increase in spending thereof. And the increase in spending, it was caused by the increase in investment. That is why we are saying now, increase in investment led to an amplified change in equilibrium. The amplified change in equilibrium, it is called the multiplier effect. Equilibrium income increases by more than the increase in initial expenditure. Then the multiplier effect occurs when a small increase in spending leads to proportionally larger increase in the national income. Remember that this is part of the key concepts that we defined when we started. We said the multiplier effect will occur when a small increase in spending leads to a proportionally larger increase in the national income there. So now, in this case, if you can look at this, original investment, it is planned there. It is denoted by AE is equals to C plus I. Then if there is a new investment, it causes that new investment to increase to AE1. Hence, you see the change in investment like we have mentioned. But that the original investment results in an original income, which is they meet at point E. Once there is investment again, that will increase to E1. Hence, you see the shift in demand from AD to AD1. And that is because of the increase in the national income. Right. So then let's look at the application of a multiplier graph now with figures. If you look at this graph, grade 12 learners, some key points here are missing. So now when we label it, we know that this one represents our 45-degree line. And then this point here, where the 200 intersects 400, that at that point, we call that point is our original equilibrium. Then when we move upwards, at that point again, it is our E1. It is our E1. And then this side, we know that then it is shows change in investment. And then this side, it will show the change in income. Then AD, the original demand curve will be here, and then the new demand curve will be there as an increase, as a result of an increase in investment. Again now, when we explain it in a graph form, we are saying the dotted or the 45-degree line shows the point where income and expenditure are equal. That's when you draw it first, also known as the Keynesian line. Right. If you are asked now to say, kindly or briefly or identify the original consumption function. The word functions in this case will be the equation. Identify the original consumption equation. And then the original consumption equation is going to be represented by AE is equals to 200 plus 0.5 of Y. Then the MPC, it is noted by the value in front of Y. In this graph, it is 0.5. Remember, we used MPC when we were calculating the value of the multiplier. So on the graph, whenever you see a graph, economics learners, the multiplier graph, and then you are asked to calculate the multiplier. If you are looking for the value of the MPC, it means any value in front of Y there, any value in front of Y there, that will represent your marginal propensity to consume. So in this case, it is 0.5. And then this one represents our autonomous consumption. Continuation. Suppose that there's an increase in investment of 300 billion. AE will increase to 500 billion. They are not saying it will increase to 3 billion, but government is injecting more funds into the economy so that the national income can increase. But what was there previously? We still had 200,000 as initial investment, and then there's a new investment that is injected of 300 billion, and then there will be an increase in investment to 500, as you can see there. So here, again, grade 12, you'll have what we call change in investment of how much? Of 300 billion. There will be a new consumption function that is represented by AE1 is equals to 500 plus 0.5 of Y. Then I still repeat, remember the value next to Y there, which is 0.5. It represents your what? Your MPC. And then Y represents national income. There will be a new equilibrium income when income increases from 400 to 1,000. As you can see there, there's a national income that increases from 400 to 1,000. In our next slide, I'll be demonstrating to say how then do we arrive to the 400, how then do we arrive to the 1,000, which is our national income, as a result of spending by government. It says, and the multiplier will be calculated as follows. Alpha, or K, is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC, which is equals to 1 over 1 minus 0.5, which is equals to 1 over 0.5, which is equals to 2. Now, remember I said to you, you should show all the steps of calculating the multiplier. So where do we get the MPC from? The value next to the Y. Now, given that our multiplier, it is 2. Another formula that we can use now, having a graph. So this formula is applicable if you are given a scenario, or it is also applicable if you are given a graph to say you should calculate the value of the multiplier. In our previous slide, remember we've calculated using 1 over 1 minus MPC. Same values. Now here, still on the graph, the examiner can say, use the following equation or use the following formula to calculate the value of the multiplier. K is equals to change in Y over change in E. And then remember I said other books, they say change in J. It is still the same. So how do we then use it? You're going to be saying your change in income, which is this one, change in Y. So your x-axis represents national income, your y-axis represents expenditure or aggregate expenditure. So your change there is going to be 1,000 minus 400 over, then you come this side, your expenditure. It is 500 minus 200, which is equals to 600 divided by 300, and then the value of the multiplier is 2. So again, remember I said to you, using all these three formulas, if you are required to do so, you should arrive to the same value of the multiplier. You can't arrive to different answers of the multiplier. Then therefore the question will be, then how did we arrive to that 1,000 there? How did we arrive to 1,000? An increase in investment led to an amplified change in the national income, and then the amplified change is the multiplier effect. The value of the multiplier as calculated, it is 2. Multiply by the change in investment. Multiply by the change in investment of 300. We want to get the new change in the national income. So if we say 2 multiplied by 3, it gives us 600 billion. This is not our new national income. This is not our new national income. This is the multiplier effect. So your new national income, you are going to be saying now, the original national income plus the change in the national income of 600, then it is going to give you 1,000. So it means your change in the national income here, it is what? It is 600. That is where we get it from. So in our equation now, K is equals to change in Y over change in J, which is equals to 1,000 minus 400 divided by 500 minus 200 is going to give us the 600, which is the multiplier effect there. The 600, which is the multiplier effect, divided by 300, which is the change in investment, then it's going to give us the value of the multiplier being 2. So when you finish with that multiplier effect in a 2-sector model, then we can arrive to a multiplier in a 3-sector model. Now we include the government, and when you include the government, they are responsible for collection of taxes there. Remember, leakages now, we no longer have one leakage unlike in a 2-sector economy. We'll now have the marginal rate or marginal propensity to save, and then now another leakage now it is taxation. So the marginal rate of taxation has an impact on the national income. So the formula therefore, 1 over 1 minus MPC is no longer equal to 1 over MPS. But now it says 1 over 1 minus MPC, it is equal to 1 over MPS plus the MRT or MPT. It is still the same one. So your formula, you are adding other leakages thereof. This is guided in the exam guideline grade 12 learners to say you should know all these equations if ever there is more than one leakage rather than the previous one. So in a 4-sector model, now we include the foreign sector now. And then when the foreign sector is added to the circular flow model, more leakages and injections occur. The injections are investment, spending, government spending, and exports. And then leakages are marginal propensity to save. The other one, remember we said marginal rate of taxation. And then because now we are including the foreign sector, we'll be having marginal propensity or marginal rate of imports. So all these have got an impact on the national income as such. So this is the 4-sector economy, and then all these 3 creates a leakage. They are going to reduce the size of the multiplier, because whatever you are supposed to be spending, it is taken away by savings, it is taken away by taxes, and then it's also taken away by imports. So we don't have much money that is circulating in the economy of South Africa. So this multiplier effect, grade 12 learners, to summarize it, we want to check how does a change in investment or a change in spending, how does it multiply itself nationally inside the borders of the country. So we are realizing that already it does not give full effect, because there are savings that take place, they affect the multiply. There are taxes that takes place, they also reduce the multiply. And then now if there are imports, or if imports are included, they also reduce the value of the multiplier thereof. That is why we are saying in the following equation now. That is why we are saying in a 4-sector model, alpha is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC is equals to 1 over MPS plus MPT plus MPM. In this case, savings, taxes, and imports make the multiplier smaller than it would have been otherwise. The larger the MPS, like we have mentioned, the larger the marginal rate of taxation, the larger the marginal rate of imports, the smaller the multiplier. If leakages are higher, the multiplier will be smaller. Opposite of that, then if leakages are smaller, the multiplier will be higher. It means in the country, we'll have more national income as such. Right, and then grade 12 learners, and therefore, we're going to be looking at this. It says here, examples of a multiplier questions. These are possible questions, not exam, doesn't mean that they are there. These are the examples of exam questions using a graph. Study the graph and answer the questions that follow. Before we can even answer the questions, let us analyze the graph. So if we look at this graph, we are realizing that on the vertical side, you've got aggregate expenditure and then our income there. So we know the value of AE, and then the equation it is AE is equals to 20 plus 0.5 of Y. Then we've got our original equilibrium there, which is your original income. And the 0.5, remember, the 0.6, remember grade 12, sorry. The 0.6 there, remember we said it represents your what? Your MPC. Whenever you see a graph, or whenever there's a multiplier graph, then you are going to say the value next to Y, it is my MPC. In this case, you know that if there's a question somewhere there that is going to say calculate the value of the multiplier, which is a 4-mark question, you know that you're going to get 4 marks there because already you know MPC. Right, then here's a graph. Then the question says, provide the name for the line labeled AE is equals to Y. Then our answer there will be, it is where income is equals to expenditure, or it is the Keynesian line, or it is the 45-degree line. The next question, which economic participant can invest in a 2-sector model? Can be businesses, can be the private sector, it can be producers, and also it can be the firms. Briefly describe the term induced consumption. Remember, it was there on our key concepts. We had autonomous consumption, and then we had also an induced consumption, of which we said autonomous consumption, it is the consumption that occurs even when the level of income, it is 0. Or we said it is independent to the level of income. So induced consumption now. Induced consumption, it is the portion of consumption that varies according to disposable income, or it varies with the disposable income. When a change in disposable income induces a change in consumption of goods and services, then that change consumption, it is called what? Induced consumption. So you can just leave it here and say it is the portion of consumption that varies with disposable income. So if you've got more disposable income, spending also occur in that way. So this induced consumption, it is MPC in short words. And we know that the higher the MPC, the more the multiply. Then the next question says, what is a disadvantage of a low marginal propensity to consume? What is the disadvantage of a low MPC? That will lead to low economic growth due to small size of the multiplier, the low equilibrium on national income. So now when MPC becomes lower, the multiplier will be lower, and then the amount that we have in the national income will also be lower. Right. Then it says here, calculate the equilibrium income, YE, using the information from the graph. So if you remember our graph was saying AE is equals to 20 plus 0.6 of Y. And then we said this 0.6 that is next to Y, it represents your what? Your MPC. That's what we said. Then therefore it means you can use that formula, K is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC, which is equals to 1 over 1 minus 0.6, and which is equals to 1 over 0.4, which is equals to 2.5. Then after that, the 2.5, then you're going to multiply it with the investment or the original investment that we get there. So now our IE, you're going to say, therefore, your IE here is equals to 50 in these instances. So now, as you can see here, grade 12 learners, they said each step they multiply it by 20. There is no need for you to do that. You can just, first step, what you do, use the formula like we have done here, calculate the value of the multiplier, and then after that you're going to be saying, therefore, the national income is equals to 2.5 multiplied by 20, which is equals to 50 in that case. Then here it's very important. Now look at how marks are allocated here. You see that the final answer has got only 2 marks. Then the formula is there. For substitution in the formula, just writing 1 over 1 minus 0.6, you get a mark. Then you do that, and then after that, when you say therefore, 2.5 multiplied by 20, there is another mark there. Then the final answer is allocated 2 marks. So it means if you only shoot to the final answer without showing workings, you will be losing 2 marks there instead of getting the full 4 marks. Another question, this one is a middle order kind of an example. It says here, discuss the multiplier effect on the national income. Just like that. Discuss the multiplier effect on the national income. Just like that, it's an 8-mark question. Then we are going to use point form to answer this question. Where do you start? You are going to give us the definition first. The multiplier relates to how much the national income changes as a result of an injection or withdrawal, 2 marks. An increase in injections into the economy, which would lead to a proportionate increase in the national income. Okay? That is the national multiplier effect. So the first one was showing us that what is the multiplier. Now we're also giving us the definition of the multiplier effect. Then when you continue with that 8-mark question, it says now, extra spending would have a knock-on effect and create even more spending. The size of the multiplier also depends on the level of leakages. The size of the multiplier is directly proportional to the level of the national income that is created there. That is why, remember we said, the higher the multiplier, the more we're going to have, the higher the MPC, the higher the multiplier, and therefore we'll have a proportional or an amplified change in the national income. Then this one, again, it says the government injects 20 million in the economy as an investment to improve infrastructure. It is the same as the example that we provided when we started. Calculate the multiplier effect if the investment calculate the multiplier effect of this investment on the economy if the marginal propensity to save it is 0.2. Show all calculations. So a scenario was created here. We realized that there's an injection of 20 million into the economy in a form of investment. Calculate the multiplier effect if you are given what you call MPS of 0.2. Every time when you approach a question, approach it the way I'm doing now. Underline all the given variables so that it is easy for you to approach your answer. Then, straightforward, you can use this equation. K is equals to 1 over MPS, which is equals to 1 over 0.2, which is 5 in that way. Then when you are done, you are only calculating the multiplier. Here you're only calculating the multiplier. But the question does not request you to calculate only the multiplier. It requests you to calculate the multiplier effect. So your multiplier effect now, you're going to say investment of 20 million, therefore the multiplier effect which will benefit the economy will be the 20 million of investment multiplied by the multiplier. It's going to give you the multiplier effect of 100 million. That is how you end your question. So by calculating the multiplier and leaving it there, it will never give you full 8 marks. The multiplier has 4 marks, and then the effect has got 4 marks. That's where you get your 8 marks from. Then using the MPC, it is also to confirm if your answer it is correct in that manner. Right. With an aid of a correctly labeled graph, explain the multiplier. So you'll get a chance of using previous question papers, grade 12. This question was asked last year, November 2021, for 8 marks. It was a 2.5 question. It was asked there. And then it says, with an aid of a correctly labeled graph, explain the multiplier. So how do we allocate marks? Marks are allocated as follows on the graph. The graph must be well labeled for indicating the labeling of the axis. These are the axes, your income, your expenditure, and your income. You get 1 mark. Labeling on the x-axis. This is labeling on the x-axis. Instead of writing aggregate expenditure, you can use values, like the way we did with that one. This one can be 20, and then this one can be 50. Shift of the consumption function, 1 mark. Consumption function is this one. E or AE, depending on which book you are using, is equals to C plus I. Now the shift, we can see there is a shift there. It goes upwards. So the shift, it will give us AE1 is equals to C plus I1. It shows that there's a shift there. Then also, after that, it says where income is equals to expenditure at the equilibrium point on the 45-degree line. You cannot just draw the line and not label it. After drawing the 45-degree line, we see that E is equals to Y. You also get a mark. Don't forget, grade 12 also to label your equilibrium points. This is our original E, and that is our new equilibrium point. You're still not done. This was just marks on the graph. You have not yet explained the multiplier effect. Then when you explain the multiplier effect now, you're going to say, the multiplier effect occurs when a small increase in spending leads to a proportionally larger increase in the national income. At the income of Y, the expenditure curve intersects the vertical axis at AE. An increase from AE to AE1 means more money is injected into the economy. Again, very important, grade 12 learners. Sometimes you know the theory behind that. But when we look at the graph, I don't see Y, I don't see AE, I don't see AE1. But Elena could have said an increase from AE to AE1 means more money injected in the economy. So whatever you've explained theoretically, it must correspond to whatever you explained in the graph so that we can get all the full marks. This causes a proportionally larger increase in income from Y to Y1. I repeat, the letters or whatever values should correspond to whatever you've written on the graph. If that is the case, then you get all your marks. Let's look at this one now. When you're answering the questions, these are still typical examples of multiplier questions. Analyze the graph first, study the graph before you can even approach the questions. If we study the graph, we realize there is our original income, we realize there is our autonomous or original consumption function, which is equal to 20 plus 0.5 of y, and then remember what we said, the value next to y there represents your MPC. Then we can see that there is a movement, additional investment from 22 to 30. Then what do? Automatically you give yourself to say, it means here it changed by 10. Then on this side, our national income, we can see there is E, and then there is E1. Our national income, it was 40, and then now it has increased to 60. Question, it increased by how much? So you're going to say, okay, I'm going to put my delta Y there, and then 40, so it's increased by 20. So now you are giving life to this graph before you can even try to answer the questions. Now let's answer the questions. The first one says, identify the original consumption function. So the original consumption function, functions are the equations, which is this one, these two on the right. So the original one, it is the starting one. So your answer there will be EO is equals to 20 plus 0.5 of y. Let's look at the next question. The next question says, what is the new consumption function on the graph? So we are from the original one, now we are moving to the new one. The answer will be E1 is equals to 30 plus 0.5 of y. The next question says, briefly describe the term induced income. We have already mentioned it before. In the definitions, we said this is the consumption that depends on the level of disposable income. It varies with, induced consumption is the portion of consumption that varies with disposable income. Then the next question, how do investors impact the multiplier? How does investors deal with investment, how do they impact the value of the multiplier? Your response there will be, the larger the investment spending, the larger the multiplier, or the smaller the investment, the smaller the multiplier. The next question now, you see how it can be. You are directed to say, use this formula of changing y over changing e to calculate the multiplier in the scenario above. So you cannot use 1 over 1 minus MPC or decide to use 1 over 1 minus MPS. You can only use those if you want to confirm that your answer is correct. But in this case, you are guided to say, use this formula thereof. So it means now, when you use it, remember I said on the previous slide, give your graph life. Communicate with the graph. Let's see. We said original income was 40. It changed to 60. So that means this one gives us change in y of 20. Here, original consumption function was 20. It changed to 30. So in between there is a change in investment or change in expenditure of how much? 10. Then, yeah, change in expenditure or change in investment of 10. Then you can therefore use the formula K is equals to change in J over change in Y, which is equals to, you can, before you go to the final answer, you can show the first step to say 60 minus 40 over 30 minus 20, which is going to give us this one after that, 20 over 10, which is going to give us 2 as the value of the multiplier. Then you can use MPS. You can also use the MPC one to calculate and check if you still get 2. And then remember, for you to use MPC, you go to the value next to Y, then that will be your MPC. Then another example, assume that the economy is initially in equilibrium where income Y is equals to 100 million, and then they save 40,000 and consume 60,000. We have mentioned this one, but the question says briefly describe the term multiplier. We have already done that. And then the next question says, what does the term equilibrium in this extract refer to? Your answer will be, it refers to where injections are equal to leakages. The next one says, calculate MPC in this case. So you're going to say MPC in this case, it is, you've got your income, which is 100,000, minus your savings, which is 40,000, is going to give you your consumption there, which is 60,000. Then there is it, we have got our 60,000. Then after that, you're going to say the 60,000 that you have divided by your income is going to multiply by 100. It's going to give you 0.6. Remember, MPC should always be given in a decimal form. So you'll get marks to show those calculations there. Right, and then the next one, it says, calculate the value of the multiplier. Calculate the value of the multiplier, show all calculations. Now we know our MPC is 0.6, K is equals to 1 over 1 minus MPC. Then when we move then to the next one, now when we move to the next one, it will give us the value of the multiplier there, being 0, the value of the multiplier, it is 2.5. Then another question, it says, this is a scenario form now. It says country X, in this case it's South Africa for example, has a closed economy without government. The citizens save 25% of all income that they have earned. The national income increased to, not by, it increased to 200 million from 160 million. Then the initial consumption or initial autonomous expenditure, it is 40 million. Then on this one again, you can check what is given and what is not given. So here, the citizens save 25%. So if they save 25%, it means they spend how many percent? 75% of all the income that is earned. Then you can also use this to bring it to a graph, in a graph form, grade 12 learners. What we do then, there is it, we're going to draw it and bring it to a graph. You label your graph. This side, we've got income, and then this side, you've got expenditure. Then you give your 45-degree line. Then that 45-degree line, you label it Y is equals to E. Then we look at what is given here. They are telling us that the initial autonomous expenditure is 40 million. So which is here. The side we mentioned, it is 40. And then you're going to write here, AE is equals to 40 plus. If they spend 25%, it means their consumption it is 75%. Now remember what we said, your MPS and MPC should always be equal to 1 and should be converted into decimal form. So if 75%, which is 75 divided by 100, is going to give us 0.75. So this is 40 plus 0.75 of y. That is that. Then we see that the original or the equilibrium national income before the increase, it was 160. So here we're going to be having our 160, which is our first E. Then we realize that has increased. The national income has increased to 200. Then you can say, okay, it has increased to 200. It means now we'll have a new consumption function there, which is AE1 is equals to, now we don't know this change in investment here, but what we have, we've got the change in income there. We don't know the change in investment, we've got the change in income, and then we know that we also have got our MPC there. So let's then look at what will then be required of us in this instance. To say, identify the original equilibrium point, in this case, if that's in. It says, identify the original equilibrium income in this extract. We can realize that the original one, it is 160 because it moved there and then it went to 200. The next question says, what percentage of income earned it is consumed by the citizens in this extract, in the extract above? They save 25%. What percentage there it is consumed? The answer there is 75%. The next question, briefly describe the multiplier process. We said it is the process whereby a small change in injections results in a proportionally larger increases in the national income. Another question, how does MPC relate to the national income? The higher the MPC, the higher the national income. The lower the MPC, the lower the national income. So it means you can see that consumption must take place at its highest form, then we'll have a higher national income. The next one says, calculate the amount of investment made leading to the new national income of 200 million. Show all calculations. Calculate the amount of investment made leading to the new national income of 200. Show all calculations. So what we are going to do now, we are going to first find the value of the multiplier. K. So here we are not calculate. Remember, the question does not require you to calculate the multiplier. The question it says you should calculate the amount of investment. But first, we have to calculate the value of the multiplier. In this case, K is equals to 1 over MPC, which is 1 over 0.5, because you remember that 0.75, because you remember that they spend 25% of their income. It means they save 25% of their income. It means they spend 75% of their income. Then I said convert that 75%, you convert it into a decimal form, which is 0.75. That's what we have in there, which is equals to 1 over 0.25, which is equals to 4. So the value of the multiplier there, it is 4 in these instances. However, you have not yet answered the question. You have answered partially of the question. After getting the multiplier now, you are going to then find K. You are going to find change in injections in these instances. Change in injection. So our change in original equation says K is equals to change in Y over change in J. So we have got K in this case, which is 4. But we don't have J. So it's going to be, say, the national income of 200 minus 160 divided by the change in J in this case. Then you cross multiply, grade 12 learners. The 1 is going to go this side, and then the change in J is going to go this side. So it's going to be 4 of change in J is equals to the 200 minus 160 multiplied by 1 does not change. 4 of change in j is equals to 40. Then what do you do then? You divide on the right hand side, you also divide on the left hand side, and then the 4 on the side cancels. We are left with change in j, which is equals to 40 divided by 4. It's going to give us 10. That is where we've got the 10 million form. So that's how we want it. Then you've got your answer now. You've got your 4 marks in this case. So the new investment that led to this 200 million, it is an investment of 10 million. And grade 12s, thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our session for the day. Remember that we've got our WhatsApp line for any clarity, which is 060-667-5044. Thank you.